Hello, this is for the subject risk management, and the topic for this video is risk, likelihood, and impact. So this is chapter 15 on our online resource. Okay. So for the application of a risk matrix, okay, again, topic risk, likelihood, and impact. And then yung ating risk matrix, essentially ito yung kumbaga two variables or two considerations doon. Ito yung diagram of the risk matrix. Here on the left side, minimeasure yung impact. And then here on the bottom side, yung likelihood naman ng isang risk. Okay? So you have your from low likelihood to high likelihood, and then you have your low impact to high impact. Okay? And then dito mo ipa-plot yung different types of risk na ma-identify nyo sa inyong organization. And then, di ba yung second would be risk ranking na depending on their impact and likelihood, then you would plot them dito. And then, makikita nyo kung alin yung ipa-priority nyo na i-deal with depending on ayun nga. Normally, yung mga nandito sa high impact saka sa high likelihood, ito yung mga serious types of risk na kailangan unahin lang, bigyang pansin, tapos of course yung treatment nila, either to tolerate, transfer, terminate, or treat mismo, okay? And then, ayun na nga, ginagamit itong risk matrix to identify the priority significant risk. Tapos, can be taken as to whether the risk profile or risk exposure is within acceptable limits and within the risk appetite and risk capacity of the individual. Okay, so I think later we'd also be discussing this, but I think in the previous videos, nabanggit naman na natin, yung risk appetite, of course, yung kayang sikmurain lang ng organization na mga types of risk, kumbaga yung kaya nilang tanggapin na types of risk. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng risk, especially yung sa opportunity risk, hindi naman lahat ay go lang ng go ang mga organizations. Okay, and then yung second one is the risk capacity. It would depend on the resources naman ng organization. Okay, kahit risk aggressive yung organization, if they don't have the resources to support yung pag-take on ng different types of risk, so that's also not good. So we have to consider pa rin, aside from, of course, the impact and the likelihood, ibabangga siya ngayon dito sa risk appetite and risk capacity nung organization. Okay? So, example niya dito, risk number 1, risk of being injured while cycling on a main road. I think this is for personal risk matrix. Risk number 2, having pension scheme benefits being downgraded, medyo serious. Risk number 3, losing job or significant source of income. Tapos yung less serious niya, risk 4, losing the friendship of one of a group of close friends. Risk 5, suffering illness that results in 3 days or more absence from work. Yeah. So yan yung kanyang example lang naman to. Does not apply to all, and it would depend on the individual's perception and of course risk appetite and risk capacity. Okay. Large organizations frequently use the risk matrix as a means of summarizing their risk profile. Ginagamit din to identify the type of risk response that is most likely to be employed. Okay. So again, ito ulit yung risk matrix tapos yung 4 T's of hazard management naman. Okay. Yung 4 T's natin, kapag siya ay high impact tapos high likelihood, of course, what you want to do is to terminate, okay? Terminate the activity generating the risk, okay? Because you don't want it to happen, and then you don't want to suffer the losses or consequences of it kapag nangyari yan, okay? Etong ikalawa, I think this one, I think mas, in a way, mas may bearing yung impact. Kasi ito yung possible losses or possible use of resources kapag nangyari yung isang risk, okay, kapag nag-materialize siya. Okay, second one would be to transfer the risk to another party through insurance normally. Kapag siya ay high impact and then low likelihood. Okay, high impact, ibig sabihin kapag nangyari siya, medyo mapapagastos ng marami ng company. Pero yung possibility na mangyari siya, hindi naman ganon kataas. Okay, medyo may possibility pero hindi nga ganon kataas. Okay, pwede siya mangyari, pwedeng hindi, pero mas malamang na hindi siya mangyari. Okay, low likelihood. And then yung third one would be itong treat. Mababa lang yung impact niya. Nandito siya dapat. Pero yung likelihood niya is mataas naman. Kung sakaling mangyari to, konti lang yung magagastos ng company. Pero yung likelihood niya, kumbaga malamang sa malamang ay may possibility na mangyari siya. So in that case, ang appropriate risk response would be to treat it. Okay? Treat the risk to reduce the likely impact or exposure. Ayan. Tapos itong ikaapat, the last one, low impact, mababa yung impact. Kapag nangyari siya, konti lang yung magagastos ng company. So, tapos yung likelihood niya, mababa lang din. So, hindi naman, kumbaga ay hindi masyadong makatotohanan na mangyayari siya ng, madalas, or kung mangyari man siya, minsan lang. Okay? Low likelihood. Ayan. So, essentially, ito yung combination of the risk matrix, tapos yung appropriate risk treatment, depending on where they are on the diagram or the illustration. Okay, tapos meron tayong yung inherent and current level of risk. Many risk management practitioners assess risk at its current level, or yung tinatawag din ng residual level. However, internal auditors prefer to undertake an assessment of the risk at its inherent level. Okay? So again, we have the inherent level saka yung current or residual level. Yung sa inherent, before pa mag-implement ng controls or measures to counter the risk yung isang organization. Okay? Tapos yung current, considered na yung existing controls and measures ng mga company. Okay? So, in a way, when you assess at the current level, tinitake into account mo na rin yung effectiveness of the controls na in-implement ng company. Okay? So, ito naman, yung figure ulit, you have the risk matrix, impact and likelihood. Tapos, ano yung, kumbaga, how does the control help in minimizing the risk impact and the risk likelihood. Okay? So, ito yung inherent level. Okay? Before any controls, nandito siya, serious kasi mataas yung impact, saka mataas yung likelihood. Alright? Tapos, if you implement a control, let's say ito, control number 1, yung kanyang impact medyo bumaba ng konti, Medyo bumaba ng konti. Tapos yung kanyang likelihood, bumaba rin ng konti. Ayan. So, intermediate level na siya. But of course, ang companies naman, normally, hindi lang isang control ang ini-implement. Okay? As many controls as possible can be embedded into the processes, into the activities of the organization. Diba? Ayan. Tapos, from this level, in-implement yung control 2 or consider yung effectiveness ng control number 2. So, bumaba ulit yung impact. Ayan. Tapos, yung likelihood, bumaba din. Ayan. So, andito na yung current level. Okay? Ngayon, dito sa current level, meron pa rin mga other controls that could be implemented. Pero minsan kasi ito yung part na meron ng constraints. Ayan, let's say, medyo mas mataas yung cost compared sa benefit. So, sometimes the company would opt to not go for implementing another control. And then, in that case, parang tinotolerate na lang yung remainder nung presence ng risk. Okay? But, if they really want, they could still implement it to achieve yung kanilang target risk level. Okay? Itong target risk level, why you want this is kasi nga, andito siya sa quadrant na to, low impact siya, tapos low likelihood din. So, di ba yung mababa lang yung possibility na mangyari siya. Tapos, kung mangyari man, is mababa rin lang yung magiging effect sa finances ng company or sa overall operations ng company. Okay, so this is really the target kasi 'di ba tolerate lang yung treatment dito ng risk. Itong sa current level, ano to, 'di ba transfer yung dito sa quadrant na no? Kasi mababa yung likelihood na niya, pero yung impact medyo mataas pa din. Andito siya sa part na to. Ayan. But again, itong implementation ng natitirang controls, it would depend kung kaya pa ng company. If they can, edi go ahead so that they could reach their target level of risk. Pero kung hindi, again, kunwari, mayroong mga constraints nga. Let's say, masyadong mapapagastos din naman yung company. Okay, tapos if you compare it to the magiging impact ng risk kapag nangyari siya is mas maliit lang. Let's say, yung magagastos ng company kapag nangyari siya. At this level naman na, at this level already. So, ayun, some considerations. Ayan. Again, yung inherent, another term na pwedeng gamitin, gross level. Tapos yung current, residual level. Tapos yung target level is yun nga yung gusto ma-achieve natin sa organization kasi yun yung tolerate ang treatment or comfort zone ng company. Hindi siya medyo nakakaratel, hindi na serious. Ayan. Tapos, meron tayong control confidence. Ibig sabihin, naniniwala yung organization na yung internal controls na ini-implement ng company to counter the risk ay effective. Okay? Confidence in such that they are assured or they're confident na yung controls or measures in place are doing what is intended. Okay? Kumbaga, yun nga, you put this measure in place para maiwasan yung pag-arise ng risk or para maiwasan na mag-materialize yung risk effects. And so, yun yung confidence mo. You're confident na gumagana yung control. So, kunwari, yung anti-theft nga na measures, segregation of duties, ayan, tapos merong counter-checking between individuals. Ang humahawak ng pera, hindi siya yung nagre-record ng pera. Tapos of course, you have your, let's say, cash vault, para, di ba, anti-theft naman, hindi manakawan yung business. Tapos you have your daily deposit sa bank para hindi naiipon sa business premises na kung sakaling, let's say, magkasunog or magkaroon ng robbery, di ba? Kung hindi man nanakaw lahat yung pera kasi wala na sa premises, nasa bangko na. Ayan. So, you have those different controls and of course, yung kumbaga pinagtitiwalaan mo na because you have these measures in place is makakatulong siya para hindi magkaroon ng, huge losses or huge consequences on the part of the business that could disrupt the operation. Okay. Going back here, it is not possible for an organization to be absolutely confident that controls will always be fully implemented and will be as effective as expected or required. Okay, minsan kahit meron ka ng segregation of duties, 'di ba? Ang tawag dito, one of the things that could undermine that is kapag nagkaroon ng collusion between the individuals. Okay, diba? You have your tao na tumatanggap ng pera, diba? Kumahawak ng pera ng business, and then you have another individual na nagre-record, chine-check kung tama na yung natanggap na pera ng business ay yun din yung naka-record sa, let's say, resibo. Diba? Kaya importante na kapag tumatanggap ng pera yung business, they issue receipts. Okay? Kasi yun yung evidence na may natanggap nga na pera yung business. Ngayon, kung walang counter-checking between these two individuals, edi hindi natin malalaman kung magkano na talaga yung pera ng business, right? But pala. Pero kahit meron na yung segregation of duties na yan, di ba, may possibility pa rin na mag-collude itong dalawang tao na to. Let's say, pareho silang may pangangailangan. Di ba? So, medyo nagpapakaramdaman and then they feel na baka pumayag itong tao na to na let's say, hindi ako magre-resibo ng, let's say, 10,000. So, pero may matatanggap siya na, let's say, may customer, di ba, na dumating. tatanggap ng 10,000, they could issue the receipt, but they could, let's say, parang palabasin nila na nawala yung resibo or kinancel yung resibo, hindi lang makalaman kung nasan yung original or whatnot, mga ganyan, or kung ano man ang pwede nilang palabasin. Okay, so, ayun, may possibilities pa rin na ma-undermine yung controls. Okay, but again, it could easily be traced through internal audit or external audit din naman. But still, andun pa rin yung possibility. Kaya hindi siya pwede maging absolute confidence sa controls ng company. Okay? And then yung controls, kailangan i-audit to make sure na effective pa din. Okay? And then, sorry. And then, one of the reasons din kung bakit nag-undergo ng regular audit ang mga businesses is to make sure na yung mga tao is they are aware na ino-audit yung company and yung mga controls is chine-check for their effectiveness. Okay? Okay, tuloy natin. So, chine-check na yung controls ay properly designed, implemented, and producing the desired effect. Okay? Tapos, yung level of control confidence, naka-illustrate din siya, pwede rin isama doon sa risk matrix. Okay? In a way, parang ito na din siya, kasi you have your controls. And then, if they are effective, then, syempre, mapapababa niya dapat yung risk impact and risk likelihood. Okay? Kasi kung hindi yan effective, edi parang hindi gagalaw. Andito pa rin yung level of risk impact and risk likelihood. 2 questions. How confident are we that this is the correct control? How confident are we that it is fully implemented and effective in practice? Okay. Yan naman pwedeng i-test through audit niya. Okay. They test the control. Tapos, it is the responsibility of internal auditors to check the correct controls. Tapos, kung sila din ay working correctly in practice. Okay. So, pag may nagkakonduct ng audit, hindi lang naman yung records, hindi lang yung physical assets ang sinacheck nila, pati na rin yung, process na yung mga transactions nag-undergo. Okay? So, diba from the occurrence of the transaction to recording with the supporting documents bago pa sila mag-appear sa financial statements ng company. Okay? So, yan. Management needs to receive assurance of adequate control. Tapos, excuse me. Yung responsibility should be allocated within the risk management documentation. Okay, so diba dun sa risk management documentation natin, naka-indicate doon kung sino dapat yung responsible for that, ensuring that there are controls, they are being implemented, and that they are working properly. Okay? Okay, 4 T's of risk response. Again, we have the tolerate, treat, transfer, and terminate. Okay, depending on, again, the level of the impact sa likelihood ng risk. Tolerate will be the main response for low likelihood and low impact risk. Treat will be the dominant response for high likelihood pero low impact. Transfer kapag high impact pero low ang likelihood niya. And then terminate kapag high impact tapos high likelihood din. Okay? Pero again, kumbaga yun yung usual suggested risk treatment. But could be different in reality depending on what is appropriate for a particular situation. Kung transferable yung risk, diba, why not transfer it unless merong cost constraints. Yeah. It is important to note that these responses are represented as the dominant or most likely response in each quadrant. Different and or additional responses may be appropriate depending on the circumstances. Okay, tapos we have itong risk significance. This is unmanageable. Ayan. So, di ba after the risk assessment, nabanggit natin in previous discussion, normally an organization can identify between 100 and 200 number of risk. Pero kapag kinonsider yung kanilang impact and likelihood, normally ang matitira na lang na, considered serious ay 10 to 20 risk. Okay? Tapos, ayun nga, sa simula, unmanageable number of risk, 100 to 200. So, a means is required to reduce the number that will be considered to be priority issues for management. Yung hanggang maging 10 to 20 na lang sila. Okay? So, yan. Nagkakaroon tayo ng test for risk significance. Okay? Normally based on monetary value siya, kung dun sa part ng impact, magkano kaya ang magagastos ng company kapag nag-materialize itong risk na ito. It's either magkano yung magagastos ng company or magkano yung mawawala sa company through, let's say, loss of sales. Kapag nangyari siya, yung mga customers nyo ay hindi nabibili sa inyo ng products, okay, or let's say, di ba, faulty product, defective product, or let's say, damage of reputation, di ba, napadamay sa, let's say, environmental scandal or environmental problem or kung ano man, okay? So, ayan. Either loss of sales or amount of money na ibabayad as compensation or for damages, kung ano man. Okay? Let's say merong na-aksidente o edi babayaran mo yung gagastos na, let's say, pang medical or kung ano man. Okay? Impact, cost, and duration of disruption. Other consideration, yung sa impact, saka sa cost, ayun na, monetary value. Itong sa duration of disruption, let's say, nagkasunog, gaano katagal before maka-resume ng operations ng business, diba? Let's say, nagkasunog, tapos it took 1 week before makapag-set up ulit ng production area, makapagsimula ulit na mag-produce ng goods yung company. Ayan, so yun, pwede, duration of disruption. Kasi yung disruption, di ba? 1 week kayong tenga, 1 week na hindi nakaproduce, so yung production nyo dapat for 1 week na naibenta sana, hindi rin naging sales ng company. Ayan, di ba? Ayan. And then, another source nga is yung adverse publicity. Let's say, nagkaroon ng oil spill or na, tawag dito, na determine na kayo ay hindi nagde-dispose ng waste properly. Ayan, mga ganyan. Okay, benchmark test for risk significance. Ang ginamit nila dito ay firm risk scorecard. Again, yung firm is financial infrastructure, reputational, and marketplace. Okay? Yung typical benchmark test for significance, again, this is just, suggested benchmark. It would still depend on the company if this is the same for them or, acceptable. Okay, financial impact on balance sheet, assets, liabilities, and equity of 0.25%. Profit and loss impact of 2.5% annual profit. Yan. Sa infrastructure, disruption to normal operations of 1/2 or half day. Increased cost of operation exceeds 10% budget. Diba? Malaking amount yan. Reputational, share price falls by 10%. Event is on national TV, radio, or newspapers. Diba? Marketplace impact on balance sheet of 0.5% turnover. Profit and loss impact of 1% annual profit. Okay. If you imagine all these scenarios, medyo serious cases. Ayan. Impact on balance sheet, 0.25. Parang ang liting na 0.25%. But if you consider yung actual value, let's say, 100 million ang amount ng total assets of the company. O, diba? Yung 0.25%, malaki yung amount. In the millions then. Let's say 2.5 million, diba? Kapag, kapag 100 million. Oh, wait. May mali. 250,000 or 2.5 million. Something like that. Profit loss impact, 2.5% annual profit. Normally, ang profit and loss kasi yung 5 to 10%, malaki na siyang halaga. So, itong 2.5%, if this is really significant amount na, disruption, di ba, half day lang yung kanila dito. Increased cost of operation, since ito ay cost, di ba, tumaas siya ng 10%. compared to the budget, significant amount yan. Okay. Share price falls by 10%, para siyang devaluation ng 10%. Valued yung company at 100 million. Pag nagkaroon ng share price fall by 10%, edi magiging 90 million na lang siya, diba? Ayan, significant amount. Event, national TV, and customer share, yung the possibility of loss. Okay? So, ayan. Impact of balance sheet, turnover, profit or loss, 1%. Financial limits can be used to test whether a risk is significant in relation to financial and marketplace risk segments of the firm risk scorecard. Tapos yan, disruptions in normal operations, how the event would be reported, yun nga, kung national TV ba yan, or regional lang, or local community lang. Okay? And then yung kasunod, risk capacity. Okay? How much risk to take? And ito normally would depend on the resources of the organization. Okay? Hanggang saang level yung kaya nilang supportahan. Okay? So they have hazard tolerance, control acceptance, saka investment appetite. Ito for the hazard risk, for the control risk, and for the opportunity risk. Okay? Risk exposure is the actual risk that the organization is taking. Okay? Kasi yun yung exposure sa kanila. Tapos yung risk appetite niya, level that the board believes is appropriate for the organization. Kasi this would depend pa kung risk aggressive siya or risk conservative. Tapos yun namang risk capacity, ayan, measure of how much risk the organization should take or can afford to take. Okay? Minsan, pwedeng magka-same level itong risk appetite saka itong risk capacity. But sometimes, mas mataas itong risk appetite. Ano? Ayan. So, kung yung leveling, so you have your risk exposure up to this level. Pero dahil nga, di ba, hindi mo naman ma-determinate lahat ng risk presence in the organization. So, you have your, down the risk exposure is the risk appetite ng organization. Diba? Ito yung kaya nilang i-take na risk. But, meron pang constraints depending on, let's say, their resources. Hanggang dito lang yung capacity nila, the level of risk that they can afford to take. Okay? So, ayun. Pero itong risk capacity, it could be equal to the risk appetite naman. Okay? But it could not, usually it could not go over the risk appetite. Diba? Bakit ka naman lalampas? Hanggang dito lang yung risk appetite. Ayan. Risk appetite of the board should be within the risk capacity of the organization and greater than or equal to the risk exposure that the organization faces. Okay, wait lang. Alin ang mas mataas ba? Sa bagay, it would depend on the person din naman. Pwedeng mas mataas yung risk appetite niya kaysa sa risk capacity kasi nga risk averse siya in that case, kasi mas mataas yung risk appetite compared to risk capacity. But for the most part, you have to consider talaga yung risk capacity ng organization. Okay? Exposed to a level of risk beyond risk-bearing capacity of that organization. This is actually normal naman. You have your risk capacity, tapos yung risk exposure mo is mas mataas naman talaga. It would be inappropriate for an organization to embark on a project that could exhaust all of the resources of the organization. Kasi meron namang, they have other things to put their resources on, like yung normal operations nila. So, before they take on, let's say, mga opportunity risk, ayan, have to consider kung magkano pa ba ang available na funds ng organization. Okay? Capacity of the organization to accept risk will depend on financial strength of the organization, robustness of its infrastructure, strength of reputation and brands, competitive nature of the marketplace. So, parang yung firm scorecard pa din ang ginamit, firm risk scorecard. It will have to acquire new production equipment. Itong example na binigay niya dito, CD industry. Kasi diba before pa magkaroon ng MP3, before magkaroon ng smartphones, a way to listen to the music or to watch movies or through CDs, Pero yun nga, na-phase out na siya. So ito, during that time, yung mga company owners ng mga CD production, ganyan, meron silang decision to make, do they stubbornly continue, or do they have to cope, or do they simply, abandon the business, okay? So ito, it will have to acquire new production equipment kapag syempre iba yung ginagamit na equipment to produce CDs compared to, MP3s during that time, in transition. Although ngayon halos wala na rin MP3 players kasi smartphones na talaga, ganyan. New skills and new distribution partners kasi magkaiba yung production ng CDs sa, of course, smartphones, diba? Ayan. So they have to learn the new process and develop the new skills required for that. Tapos new distribution patterns or partners na din, suppliers, ganyan, distributors. Okay, kung kanino nila ibebenta or i-channel through para makarating sa clients or customers or end users. Okay. It may be that the transfer to the new technology and the risks that it involves are outside the resources and risk capacity of the organization. In that case, ayan, they could explore strategic options, seek joint venture partner, okay, kung sino yung mas may alam dyan sa panibagong business na yan, locating a buyer for the business, or simply withdrawing from the marketplace. Okay? So, ayan. And then lastly, meron ditong tawag dito, case about risk capacity. Ito pagdating sa bank, although very wordy and very generalized siya, but a good read pa din naman. Ayan. Primary risk, operational risk, and business risk. Ito ay for banks or financial institutions. And ang naging concern nila dito, lack of liquidity in the market. This is during the 2008 financial crisis. And then, of course, deteriorating economic outlook. Okay? Ang nangyari naman kasi noon, yung kanilang risk capacity, naging mababa yung kanilang risk capacity compared to the risk that they have taken on. Kasi nga, di ba, nagpautang for the housing market. Pero, housing bubble lang naman pala siya and hindi siya nag-materialize into profits. But, on the other hand, naging huge losses for the financial institutions lang pala siya. Okay, so ayun lang for this chapter. Again, risk, likelihood, and impact. Yung naging focus niya on the risk matrix na yun. Nagiging considerations niya to help in the decision-making process ng company or organization. Okay, so that's it for this one. Thanks and bye.